Meatball?
Yes, that's fine. Yeah, please move the podium a little bit forward. And when you're ready, you have 4 minutes.
The current detente in inter-Korean relations has been a success so far. As the affirmative team, we cannot make it more obvious that this is a true statement. Before going on to our arguments, we'd first like to start off with our definitions. Current detente is the easing of hostility in relations between North and South Korea during Moon's presidency, and success thus far means has been beneficial to the peace of both North and South Korea up until now. Now, outlining our arguments, our first argument is regarding the drastic change in inter-Korean relations. Our second argument is about social successes, and our third argument will be regarding military successes. Now, going on to our first argument, if we look at a timeline comparing the previous to the current situation, it becomes pretty obvious that the current situation is a success. Going back to 2010, North Korea launches a torpedo at Cheonan warship, killing 46 people just because of a border dispute at the NLO. In November, they bomb a South Korean island, murdering innocent civilians. In 2013, we see North Korea launching their third nuclear missile test, and in 2017, they fire long-range missiles into the Sea of Japan. Looking at the previous situation, it's pretty obvious that we're on the verge of war, and there's so much tension and violence. But now, looking at the current situation, the true leaders are declaring an end to the Korean War, and according to the CNN, experts say that this bilateral treaty is no different from an official cessation of war. At the Panmunjom meeting between the two leaders, the border of the NLL, the reason for the Cheonan sinking incident is renegotiated. And a report from the BBC states that Kim, besides agreeing to shut down multiple nuclear facilities, actually invited journalists and foreign experts to witness the closing of the Yongbyon nuclear complex. So going back from murdering innocent civilians and innocent people to a peace treaty, it makes it pretty obvious that this relationship is a success. And this debate basically comes down to one simple question. Were we safer a few years ago when North Korea was bombing Yongbyon Island, when they were hurling nuclear weapons into the Sea of Japan? Or are we better off and are we safer now when Kim Jong-un and President Moon are holding hands at Panmunjom, promising there will be no more violence in the Korean Peninsula?
Second, we can take a look at how the current detente has been successful through a social lens. So, overlapping with points Jaden mentioned in our first argument, some of the success can be attributed to the resumption of family reunions and decrease in propaganda in North Korea. For one, there hasn't been a family reunion since 2015, but in that 3-year hiatus, there's finally been one this year. Also, they've been removing loudspeakers, which South Korea used to project South K-pop and other modern influences into that country. Notably, a new younger generation of South Koreans are helping and serving as a testament to this cause, an increasingly liberal generation that supports unification. Also, there's been events that indicate social reform. For one, the North Korea and South Korea agreed to send a letter to the International Olympics Committee to confirm their intention to co-host the 2030 Olympics. This plan is to organize friendly competitions marking meaningful anniversaries between the South and North. For example, the first anniversaries of the April Inter-Korean Summit and the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. Furthermore, this 2018 Pyeongchang Olympics, the North and South both marched together in the opening ceremony and fielded a united women's ice hockey team. And this is more significant than North Korea's previous participations in the Olympics. Also, North and South Korea have agreed to reconnect rail and road links that have been cut since the Korean War, which is half a century ago. This has resulted in the first South Korean train crossing the border to North Korea, which occurred last week. Also, little tiny events such as the reunification of time, where North and South Korea were off by 30 minutes, shows the character of Kim Jong-un. And finally, sort of economically, the Kaesong Industrial Complex, which aimed to promote inter-Korea relations. 124 companies operated in this complex, and 98.1% of the Korean government expects that it will reopen by 2021 and aid in the revival of several Korean companies. Finally, through a military reform, our third and final argument takes a look at the successful military reforms, and in this case, the gradual denuclearization of North Korea. Similar to what Jaden mentioned in the beginning, but Kim Jong-un promised a halt missile test and held to his word for the past year. And since then, not a single ICBM was tested. Also, in the summit between Moon and Kim, there were specific promises made. For one-third of those promises has been met, and two sides have had high-level talks that establish a joint liaison office through the Panmunjom Declaration and hosted reunions for separate families and destroyed 10 guideposts on the DMZ. Also, finally, nuclear testing facilities have been blown up, and large land-operated weapons and artillery have been covered up. And also, they destroyed the Pangyeri nuclear test facility, and they invited journalists and everyone to watch. Thus proving that through these military and social reforms, the baton has been successful thus far.
The floor is open for cross-examination. The negative will have 3 minutes. Would you, Nathan, would you push that podium back a little bit so they can see? Are you ready?
You gave us examples of nuclear sites that have been destroyed and are planned to destroy. Can you give us those names?
So the first one we mentioned during our speech is the Yongpyeong complex, which Kim Jong-un actually invited experts to oversee the closing. And there's also Punggye, and
So number one, in the case of Punggye, he promised that he was going to invite independent experts of nuclear facilities from all around the world. But he broke that promise and only invited media journalists and did not invite any of these experts. How can you explain this?
the fact that he invited media experts just testifies to the success of this issue, and it just shows an improvement for the previous issue, which is what we're trying to prove in this debate.
But it is mainly true that he did not, and he declined to accept any experts on the nuclear issue.
As I stated before, that is true, but the fact that he still invited journalists shows that it's an improvement from the previous situation.
So our argument is essentially there's a small improvement.
There's a big improvement because it's actually closing the nuclear facilities as he promised.
And also in the case of Yongbyon and Punggye, you said that they destroyed the nuclear facilities, but are you aware that the nuclear fuel that is produced in these two sites are different from the one that is used in ICBM? Doesn't that mean that ultimately destroying these nuclear facilities would have no impact at all in nuclear power?
No, because they're just starting to agree with the promises they made at the Panmunjom agreement. And it's not that this denuclearization process can happen immediately. It's just a gradual process. So I don't think it's still a big impact.
Okay. What is the definition of detente, the affirmative portion?
We explained in our first speech that it's the easing of hostility in relations between North and South Korea during President Moon's presidency.
So if these two nations were simply be able to ease tensions about this process, then you guys would consider it a successful path.
They were able to ease tensions and bring peace to both South Korea.
As an
Bring
improvement
peace.
from the previous.
Bring peace, right?
What's your definition of success?
Success thus far is defined as something that has been beneficial to the peace of North and South Korea up until now, as an improvement from the past.
So you said it's bringing peace. And now what's the definition of detente?
We already
Yes,
asked that.
And detente, so aren't you basically proving that you brought peace by a policy that is supposed to bring peace? Because that's essentially the definition of detente. So your goal is just trying to prove that you need to have peace, right?
No, our goal is to prove that our relations, our strained relations between the two Koreas have eased as an improvement from before.
So your standards from before is every time until now. And that includes all the sunshine policies and different detente policies we have in the past, correct?
Yes, that were comparatively less successful.
Alright, that's
Okay, thank you.
So there's still the nuclear facilities on that's the definition of detente. I think I should just say that peace on sunshine. I wrote down his
Okay, next we invite up the negative constructive speech. Once you begin, you'll have 5 minutes to start to make your speech.
So our opponents have stated that drastic changes have occurred since the turn of the year to mend relations in the inter-Korean peninsula, inter-Korean relations. However, now first we would like to question and clarify the idea of success in this debate. We define success as not whether something was positive or not, but rather as whether something was actually done. We define success in this scenario as events that actually take us closer to the goal of denuclearization and peace on this peninsula. Because without a fully verified statement of denuclearization, we will never be truly guaranteed our safety. The affirmative side has made the argument that the recent peace talks show evidence of successful movements towards denuclearization. However, looking at past historical events, such diplomatic events have never actually had any realistic meaning, as seen by the failed sanctuary policy. This time, it's no different. It may seem as if the peace talks are signaling a significant historical event, but if you were to dig deeper into the actual negotiations being proposed by the North, we're able to see that the North is simply treating the agreements as a chess game, where they have to capture as many of the opponent's pieces as they can without losing much of their own. This will be further elaborated on one of our contentions. Also, in the cross-examination, they have made the point that the Punggye has been dismantled. However, in reality, Punggye was never actually fully dismantled, but rather simply closed. This means that the nuclear facility still exists underground. Now, onto our actual contentions. Following the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, relations between South and North Korea have thawed, as President Moon Jae-in and Chairman Kim Jong-un have had 4 summit meetings. While some would argue that this so-called détente has been a success so far, there is no realistic evidence that points to any verifiable success. Our reasons for this are that the North hasn't made progress in denuclearization, is continuing to develop and create weapons of mass destruction, and isn't going to make any actual progression towards reunification without the approval of the United States. The first and most critical issue is that there must be evidence of a complete, verified, irreversible denuclearization, known as CVID, by North Korea before any sanctions are lifted. CVID would start with the submission of a detailed inventory of North Korea's nuclear arsenal, but North Korea has refused to provide this list that they say that the US will use it as a target list for an attack. If North Korea is not even willing to take the first step in CVID, how can anyone describe what's happening there as a success? Additionally, as peace talks have stalled recently, North Korea has announced that they would seriously consider restarting the nuclear weapons program unless sanctions were lifted. So basically, North Korea wants a huge gift for doing absolutely nothing, even though South Korea and the US have demanded that CVID occur before any sanctions are lifted. Another significant reason why the détente has been a failure so far is that the evidence shows that North Korea continues to develop weapons of mass destruction. It was front-page news on November 12th, when major news outlets reported that North Korea is operating more than a dozen of its secret missile bases. The headline in the New York Times called it a, quote, brave deception. However, even though North Korea had said that they are in the process of denuclearizing, they are moving ahead with the ballistic missile program secretly. That's not even the end of it, as North Korea announced on November 16th that they have tested a newly developed ultra-modern weapon under the supervision of Kim Jong-un. Thus, North Korea is continuing to develop dangerous weapons that threaten the world and destabilize the East Asian region. There seems to be no real evidence of the détente that North Korea's weapons capabilities get better and better. In all reality, a détente and peace in the region is not possible without the approval of the United States. Under the current president, the United States is only interested in a deal that will benefit itself. A peace overture by the Korean foreign minister in October that hinted of South Korea lifting economic sanctions drew a swift rebuke from President Donald Trump, when it said that South Korea can't do anything without the approval of the United States. This was a slap in the face to any bilateral deals that could be made between South and North Korea, meaning that even though some believe that the détente is going on, nothing matters and no deal can be made unless the US does so. More importantly, this reaffirms the idea that South Korea is merely another puppet of the United States undermining South Korea's sovereignty. The US is also involved in the arrangements due to the 23,000 US troops on South Korean soil. North Korea is displeased with the large amount of troops in the South, and the office of South Korean President Moon Jae-in announced that, quote, North Korea made it clear that it would have no reason to keep nuclear weapons if the military threat to the North was eliminated and its security guaranteed. Such statements confirm the argument that the North is using the détente as a tool for gaining as much one-sided deal as possible.
Thank you to the negative. Cross-examination, Rory, 3 minutes.
So you said that North and South Korea hasn't really achieved anything in their relationship. What do you think about them refining borders at the NLO, which is actually the cause of the Cheonan thinking incident?
There's always different steps for these countries to, on the surface, look like they're making some changes. For example, even Sunshine Policy, or even in like 2015 when the Korean Industrial Complex was first proposed. There's so many different ways that North Korea is always proposing to have better relations with South Korea. Simply showing that you have better relations doesn't show that we're any step closer to permanent peace, which ultimately is denuclearization.
Do you have any solid evidence proving that this is going to happen again, like the Southern policy in 2007?
I think that burden is on your side, not ours, because you have to prove why this is different from any other case, where all we have is a precedent to prove to you that this always has happened. There's no reason anything will change. So rather, you guys have to provide to us evidence, which you obviously haven't on your first speech.
So during 2007, do you realize that during Nomuya's Sunshine Policy, do you know when this actually started?
In 2000, you're talking about 2007? Let me talk about this. In 2007,
Can you answer the question?
what do you mean when it started?
Like, do you know when he started his Sunshine Policy?
Can you tell me?
So it was basically 2007.
Yeah.
Do you know what the end of his term is?
Yeah, but in the year 2000, Kim Dae-jung started his own policy, and like that's not the end of his presidency. I don't think that really matters whether or not you're in the end of your presidency or early in your presidency.
So what we're trying to say, in 2000, it was the end of Clinton's policies, Clinton's presidency. So it was when he had to end his term. So he couldn't make any bold moves. But this situation is different because Trump and Moon Jae-in are both starting their presidency, and they have plenty of time to make negotiations.
Look, number one, let's look at year 2000. In June 15, President Kim Dae-jung and Kim Jong-il promised to have economic cooperation, peace, and to start getting rid of the nuclear artillery. And they also talked about even reunification for these two countries. The same happened in 2007. It's very familiar, these types of languages of peace, but really, you don't really bring any changes. And just the fact that you have 5 years to bring this entire goal into action, I don't think really makes sense, because for the last 2 years of Moon's policy, there has been no verification process at all for any form of denuclearization in North Korea. And just because you have 3 more years, that doesn't really prove anything to begin with.
However, has a North Korean leader in the past withdrew or pulled out troops and firearms out of guard force in the joint security area of the DMZ?
But that necessarily didn't
Yes or no?
change the current.
Yes or no?
Yes.
So there has been an instance in the past?
No.
No, there
Okay. Thank you. Affirmative. Affirmative. Whenever you're ready for your rebuttal speech, you can wrap that. Yeah, but you have up to 2 minutes for.
Wait, Mr. Anderson, but were there changes made to the time?
Only thing I added was 30 seconds to the rebuttal speech.
You add
You can take an extra 30 seconds. Yeah. But depending on how long, I need to finish by 8:40, so I might cut off a prep time here or there. Yeah.
You didn't say that.
I keep track of the time, and if I can cut this one.
What's his name, man? 됐어.
나도 일단 다
탑 7.
내가 한 번도 연습 안 해봤어.
Sorry, please, not softer. Maybe the last point, but less than one. Okay, guys. Affirmative, you'll have 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
First, I want to start off this rebuttal speech by clarifying the definition of détente. Détente is, by definition, the purpose of détente is, as defined, the easing of hostile tensions between the two Koreas, not the idea of permanent peace or denuclearization. Okay, so now I'll go on to the contentions of the negative side. First, I want to bring up their statements and claims on the role of the United States and how that could cause an impasse to the détente. Well, actually, they provided no tangible evidence. These are merely theories proposed by the opposition party to the Moon administration. If they can't provide any evidence, any statistic that shows that the U.S. will serve as a permanent obstacle to the détente, they cannot prove that the détente is a failure because of the role of the United States in this. Also, yes, it is not evidence that North Korea has committed or will commit to a complete and irreversible program of denuclearization. However, it is evident that North Korea has halted all nuclear tests. The frequency of North Korea's nuclear tests prior to the summit talks was very high. At least every month, North Korea would test a missile, whether it was an intermediate range or an ICBM that could reach anywhere in the United States. Also, this accumulated to the H-bomb test in September, both the most powerful nuclear test of North Korea, 8 times stronger than Hiroshima. The termination of these hostile nuclear tests qualify as a reason why this détente is successful thus far. In fact, North Korea also the destruction of Punggye nuclear test site has been shown through bombing photos, as shown in the media. Also, you can't separate the psychological dimension of peace from détente. Yes, détente can be measured in physical terms, such as the decrease in the number of nuclear arms one country carries. However, hostility and aggression, the things that make up the strained relations that détente attempts to resolve, are inherently psychological. In times of fear, apprehension, and pressure of a war, of an impending war between the two Koreas, these hopeful images at the summit talks are exactly what the countries and the world needed. Restoring this faith proves that we have laid out a successful foundation for peace and for the easing of hostile relations. Also, yeah, thank you.
Is it right away?
You have a minute whenever. Well, now it's 40 seconds.
I think President Moon hasn't done anything. I think he's moonwalking. He's frankly moving backwards instead of forwards. So I'm going to tell you why that's so in my speech today. So number one, they talk about détente, and they say that in their definition of success, they're trying to merely prove to you that they're going to make these fundamental changes by easing tensions. So ultimately what they're trying to prove to you in today's debate is easing tensions was successful because they eased tensions. Judge, that definition is exactly the definition of détente to begin with. Their burden of proof doesn't end in the fact that they were successfully able to ease tensions, because that's what détente is. Détente is supposed to ease tensions. What they have to prove to you is the implications of those eased tensions. What does this eased tension mean for the future of South Korea and North Korea? They can't just say détente was successful because we had détente. That is circular logic to begin with. More importantly, on the social lens that we have been talking about, I'm going to tell you why this social lens isn't the more persuasive argument. Because number one, in the year 2000, June 15th, President Kim Dae-jung and Kim Jong-il stated in a summit that they would cooperate and faithfully help each other economically. Kim Dae-jung even invited Kim Jong-il to Seoul when time seems appropriate. Sounds familiar. In 2007, October 4th,
President Roh Moo-hyun and Kim Jong-il declared in a summit they will try to decrease nuclear facilities and military tension with temporary peace and détente, cooperation economically, and promote faith and peace between the two countries. Sound familiar? And in 2018, April 27th, President Moon and Kim Jong-un declared a summit they would promote peace and cooperation in the Korean Peninsula. Sound familiar? In all of these cases, you see that we always have the same goal of détente, but nothing happens. No, there's no implications, and we don't think that there's anything unique about this case. And they tell you these nuclear facilities that have been destroyed, but number one, Punggye-ri nuclear incident, it hasn't been dismantled completely, it's only been closed according to experts, hence the nuclear facilities may still remain underground. But more importantly, according to the IAEA, a UN watchdog organization, it states that there is no sign that Kim Jong-un's government has stopped any of its nuclear activities. Number two, they have never provided a single nuclear weapons inventory, a full list of all the weapons. And number three, they have never offered any form of verification methods for dismantlement of nuclear programs. And they tell you that they invited media members from all around the world. Initially, they were also supposed to invite different experts around the world, but they renounced this decision because they were afraid. Sounds suspicious. We think that these all prove to you that in the end, North Korea is simply doing the same thing it has done over the last years, and the implications of this détente has no real effects to our society to actually bring success.
Thank you. Negative, you have the rest of the first question, Ms. Crossfire.
So, yes, although the North Korea still shows evidence of the disclosure of Punggye, there's much more evidence with satellite images that show the North continuing to develop these nukes. How will you defend against this evidence?
Okay, well, first of all, before denuclearization happens, there has to be a reconciliation between the two Koreas, and in measuring the success of the reconciliation, the pressure of and the relieving of pressures, yes, it has been successful, and we have laid the first step toward denuclearization. However, you said before that all of these summits sound familiar. They have same goal, and there has been no proof thus far that these summits are different. However, has any North Korean leader before destroyed guard posts in the DMZ? No? Well, has any North Korean leader before suspended military exercises near the military demarcation line? Okay. Well, has any North Korean leader previously built a road and helped excavate those who died in the North Korean War?
They tried to before.
Okay, they tried to, but they did this time. Okay? And has any North Korean leader in the past created a 20-kilometer no-flight zone?
Well, if they don't bring anything new, of course it's not going to be persuasive. They're going to bring something new for us to deceive South Korea again in some way.
Yes, but wasn't the question whether the success of the détente is thus far, whether the détente is successful thus far? Yes, of course, North Korea might have some agenda hidden underlying, but we can't tell that in the future. We can't tell what is going to happen in the future. But in terms of present success, isn't North Korea achieving progress in terms of détente?
Achieving progress is not equal to success.
Okay.
Let's give somebody else a chance. It's your question, Chris. So.
Is the affirmative side aware of the détente that happened between the USA and the USSR in the past?
Yes.
Then does the affirmative side do not see the similarity between that détente and the current détente in North Korea and South Korea already?
What sort of
Can other people respond? You're not going to get a grade unless you try to get in.
I don't think you can really wave off the current success that the détente has had thus far just because you see some similarities in other.
First of all, both détentes have involvement with nuclear action and nuclear weapons. That was one of the biggest debates that happened between the two nations. And second, both détentes were used as an opportunity for both nations to pursue their individual goals using the ease tension and using that as a distraction so that they can pursue their own goals and further influence, spread their sphere of influence.
Because of this evidence that you provided, are you 100% sure that this detente will lead to just North Korea abandoning and taking back all their promises?
The negative side isn't affirming the fact that it will pursue this pathway. However, looking at the evidence that we have, looking at the evidence available in this whole world, it is highly clear, and it's very clear that there's a high chance that North Korea and South Korea's relationship is going through a path that is very unhealthy, not only for South Korea and North Korea, but for the whole world, especially when big nations such as the United States, and even China after the G20 summit, is involving themselves in this issue.
So highly likely.
Question back to you guys.
Is it me? Alright. So you said that in the previous speech that Punggye-ri is still running underground secretly. Is this just a conspiracy theory, or do you actually have a solid source and evidence?
Deputy Director General for Safeguards of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Oli Noin, said that the closing of this nuclear site is different from dismantling it. Chemicals still remain underground.
Thank you guys. You have 2 minutes to finalize your final speech. Negative scores.
얘네가 하나 보는데 이렇게 몰라야 돼요.
reflection 맞냐?
Such convoluted. Who's gonna understand that? That's the only thing I got. He's waiting for this I use your restroom. I used your smartphone. Sound familiar? That's what I always use. Sound familiar?
Presidential term, 2 minutes, no term point. Okay, isn't it negative?
First up, we have the negative. Are you ready?
Throughout this debate, the affirmative and opposing side have been discussing whether or not the current detente policies have been successful or not. While the negative side was able to justify their points, the affirmative side lacked justification and filled the argument with obvious and amateur facts. If you look at the past, not only is Korea's history, but in a bigger scope, looking at the debate between USA and USSR, we can see distinct similarities. First, both detente involved the use of nuclear weapons. Second, during both detentes, nations seized the opportunity to pursue their own goals. In the case of Korea, using the exaggerated peace signals from the press, North Korea is using the distraction in order to achieve their personal goals. While South Korea has been pouring resources to North Korea as an offer of peace, North Korea hasn't shown any solid development in the denuclearization process, as explained by experts in the IAEA. Second, with America's huge involvement in this issue, this is becoming a case of proxy negotiations where different motives are blurring the path. Therefore, the affirmative may say that the detente would help ease tensions. However, it definitely hasn't been a success in accordance to the goals it is trying to achieve.
The negative side has been constantly using this circular reasoning in their debate and are really not listening to the clear facts and the statistics that show that tensions have been reduced and that the détente has been a success thus far. Even though the armistice to end military hostiles in the Korean War was signed in 1953, the lack of peace treaty means that South Korea and North Korea have been still technically at war for 65 years. And during this time, tensions has escalated to almost warlike tensions in 1980. For example, in 1987, North Korea even killed the first lady in 1974, and the bombing in South Korean airliner in 1987 that killed all 115 people. I mean, how can one say that tensions have not been reduced? We have seen time and time again throughout this debate of the various signs of improvement between the relations of South Korea and North Korea, from holding hands at DMZ to the destruction of Punggye-ri. And this good relation does not seem to be wearing out anytime soon, as North Korea and South Korea have even volunteered to host the 2032 Summer Olympics. The success of the current détente has clearly and through statistics and facts proven in this debate, and that we believe that this is why we take this debate home.
Okay, let's give them a round of applause, everybody. Okay, please rotate up there as fast as possible. Please.